When they placed me at the side table near the serving hall during my brother Philip's wedding reception, I laughed softly to hide my wounded pride. 17 days later, I pulled the strings that cut off our family company's biggest contract with his in-laws firm. They thought I would bow quietly to shame, but sometimes silence is the seed of thunder. When the news broke, the look on their faces was priceless, a mixture of shock and fear. My people, have you ever been sidelined by your own blood? If you have, then you know why I could not swallow this insult. Before I tell you how it all happened, let me ask, where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. This tale is about betrayal, power, and the courage to stand firm even when family turns against you. It taught me that in life, respect is not begged for, it is demanded. If you enjoy stories where betrayal meets justice, then this one will speak to your soul. I was never meant to be the successful one in our home. That crown was always kept for my brother Philip, the child of promise. From our youth, the roles were carved clearly. Philip with his quick smile and charm that lit up every room, and me, Joyce, with my books, my discipline, and my quiet sense of duty. At 50, Philip still walked into gatherings and owned the space with his laughter and height. Broad chest, slick words, a handshake that made strangers trust him. I, on the other hand, was always called the serious one. A polite way of saying dull. Our family business, Solid Rock Construction, was built from the ground up by my father, Benjamin, 39 years ago with borrowed tools and sweat. Over the years, I transformed it into one of the most trusted firms in Sunrise Town. After completing my MBA at Kingsland University, I rejected offers abroad and returned home. The company was weak, nearly broken, and I gave it strength again. Yet my mother Patricia would shrug and say, "Joyce is good with figures," as if my gift was a simple hobby, instead of the shield that kept our company alive. Philip carried the loud title of Vice President of Partnerships, but his real work was thin. He showed up at luxury dinners, laughed at the right jokes, and collected praise for contracts I had labored to design. Meanwhile, I carried the weight of 60-hour weeks as Chief Financial Officer, holding meetings, calculating risks, and steering the ship away from storms. Each time I hinted at the unfairness, my father Benjamin would answer, "Your brother brings the people, Joyce. People love him. That counts just as much as your papers and numbers." Your papers and numbers. That phrase became my invisible cage, the place where they always kept me, in the business and in our family. Things grew tense when Philip announced his engagement to Aliat Okoye, daughter of the Okoye family who owned Okoye Estates, one of the largest real estate firms in the region. For 3 years, Solid Rock Construction had been their main contractor, with a contract worth millions each year. I had personally fought for fairer terms on the latest renewal, ensuring our company finally saw proper profits. My mother Patricia clapped her hands with joy at the dinner table. "Do you not see? The Okoyes will now be one with us. This marriage is not just love, it is business," she declared. I smiled faintly, but my heart grew heavy. Aliat's eyes always carried a sharpness, as though she saw our family not as people, but as projects to be rearranged. "Joyce, you must learn to join the social circles now," my mother told me later that night as we cleared the table. "With the Okoyes in our family, you cannot keep hiding behind papers and spreadsheets. Maybe you will even meet a man." I was 32 and single, a fact my mother repeated like it was a shameful secret. "I am not hiding, Mama," I answered carefully. "I am running this company. Someone has to." "Well," she said, tapping my cheek as if I were still a child, "Philip has carried us well. You should learn to shine through him." Those words stung more than she knew. The 6 months leading to Philip and Aliat's wedding felt like a season of small humiliations for me. At Aliat's engagement party held at the Okoye mansion, I wore a blue dress I had saved up for, hoping to blend with the elegance of the crowd. Aliat's mother, Madame Ruth, looked me up and down and said with a smile that cut like glass, "Oh, how professional you look." That night, I was introduced to guests simply as Philip's sister who helps in the family business. Whenever I corrected them, "I am the Chief Financial Officer of Solid Rock Construction," Their eyes glazed, and they quickly returned to talking about the wedding or Okoye estate's newest luxury project. I stepped outside that evening to breathe and overheard Aliat and her mother whispering. "The Solid Rock family has potential," Madame Ruth said, "but their thinking is still small town. Especially the sister. She hides in work, poor girl. No sense of the bigger world." Aliat laughed softly. "Father says their company has good bones. After the wedding, we'll start reshaping them properly." My heart sank. To them we were not partners. We were raw material to be molded. I slipped back inside before they noticed me, telling myself not to overthink. But deep down, a seed of dread had taken root. As wedding preparations continued, Aliat made sure to keep me involved, but only for tasks that stripped me of dignity. She refused my offers of real help, yet constantly interrupted my office hours with trivial requests. "Joyce, what was that holiday spot your family used to visit?" she asked one afternoon, cutting through my budget meeting. "Lake Berman," I answered flatly. "We went there every year until Papa sold the cabin." She clapped with delight. "Perfect. We'll add it to the photo montage at the rehearsal dinner." "Thank you, Joyce, you're so good with little details." Little details. Even our family history became decoration for her storybook wedding. My worries deepened when I noticed Papa's health fading. His hands trembled, and I caught him hiding tablets in his drawer. "Papa, are you all right?" asked one evening. He waved me off with a weak smile. "Just age, Joyce. Nothing to trouble yourself with." But I knew it was more. Mama dismissed my concern with irritation. "Your father is fine. Don't create problems. Focus on supporting Philip and Aliat's wedding. That's what matters now." Her words cut me, as if my father's well-being meant less than wedding decorations. "Even though I was not chosen to be among Aliat's bridal train, we're keeping it small, just my closest friends," she explained sweetly. Mama insisted I accompany them to the bridal salon in the city. I left urgent office work behind and sat awkwardly on a velvet sofa, watching Aliat twirl in gowns that cost more than my yearly rent. Her friends whispered loudly about my plain shoes and work clothes. "So brave of her to care so little about appearance," one said mockingly. Aliat smirked at her reflection, pretending not to hear, but I saw the satisfaction in her eyes. Philip too began to drift away. Our monthly dinners, a tradition since our youth, were suddenly cancelled. "I'm busy with Okoye business," he'd say, until excuses vanished altogether. When I finally cornered him for lunch 2 months before the wedding, I tried to raise my concerns. "Philip, something is changing between us. And Papa doesn't look well." He waved me off. "Joyce, you worry too much. I'm getting married. That's all." I pressed further. "The Okoyes. I'm not sure they respect what we've built." His eyes hardened. "This again. You're jealous, aren't you?" The word struck like a whip. "Jealous? Of what?" asked. Philip leaned forward, bitterness in his voice. "That I finally found love. That for once, I'm the one shining. All my life, Papa praised you for your numbers, for saving the company. Now it's my turn. Aliat and her family see potential. They believe in me." My mouth went dry. "Philip, you don't see it. They are trying to control us." He pushed his untouched plate aside. "Maybe it's time you realized not everything must be under your control, Joyce. This merger will take us higher. With or without you." He walked out of that restaurant, leaving me frozen, my food untouched. For the first time in my life, I felt my brother was no longer mine but theirs. The golden child who had always been handed ease was now willing to hand away our legacy. I stared at my reflection in the glass and whispered to myself, "They will not erase me. Not like this." The morning of the wedding came bright and golden, as if the heavens themselves blessed the Okoyes. The ceremony was at Palm Vineyard Estate, a sprawling property owned by Aliat's family. I dressed in my carefully chosen burgundy gown, my hair and makeup professionally done, a rare indulgence. Yet the moment I arrived, a brisk wedding planner shoved a clipboard in my hands. "You're Joyce, right?" Aliat said you're excellent with details. Please help coordinate the vendors. The band is missing its list, and the flowers are wrong. Blink. I'm not staff. I'm the groom's sister. She frowned. Family photos were already taken. Please handle the delays. I spent 2 hours running around fixing problems that were not mine. By the time I escaped, guests were seated. The champagne toast had been made, and the moment when Papa first saw Philip in his suit had passed. Mama scolded me as I slipped in. Where have you been? Always creating drama. My voice cracked. I was solving issues they threw at me. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. Sit quietly. The wedding is starting. And so I did. In the back row, far from my family, watching strangers occupy the seats meant for me. The ceremony was beautiful. Aliat floated down the aisle in a dress fit for royalty. Papa's face glowed with pride, and Philip beamed brighter than the sun. I tried to silence the ache in my chest and focus on his happiness. But the true wound came at the reception. When I looked for my place card, I could not find it in the grand hall. A waiter whispered, "Madam Joyce, your seat is in the annex." Confused, I followed him into a side room, the catering kitchen. There, a small round table had been set for the staff. My name card lay neatly beside the photographer's assistant and the band's coordinator. I stood frozen. This was no mistake. This was humiliation dressed as organization. Behind me, Madame Ruth's voice floated like poison. "Is something wrong, dear? Oh, don't frown. We thought you'd be more comfortable here, near the workers. Aliat worried you'd feel out of place with the couples. Always so busy with your career, no time for a husband. Here at least you can relax." My throat burned as I looked past her into the grand hall where Philip sat at the high table, laughing beside Aliat and her parents. I forced my legs to move and found him during a quiet moment. "Philip, why am I seated in the kitchen?" He shifted uneasily. "The seating was complicated, Joyce. Just don't make a scene. For me." My voice broke. "I am your only sister." His eyes hardened. "Then prove it. Support me today." He turned back to Aliat without waiting for my reply. In that moment something inside me cracked, not with weakness but with awakening. I would never again let them treat me as less. I left the reception quietly, clutching my purse as whispers followed me out. My phone buzzed with a message from Philip. "Stop making this about you." Those 5 words sealed my resolve. The week after the wedding, I buried myself in office work, though my chest still burned with humiliation. One evening, while balancing quarterly statements, I noticed several suspicious transfers. Each was just under $50,000. Small enough to avoid automatic red flags. But together they added up to a storm. Curiosity sharpened into dread as I followed the paper trail. It wound through shell accounts and holding companies until finally landing under Philip's name. Nearly $2 million had been funneled into Okoye Estates projects, funds that belonged to Solid Rock. My hands trembled as I printed the evidence. This wasn't just poor judgment, it was theft. And it wasn't his alone. I stormed into Papa's office that night. He looked friendlier than ever, his eyes sunken. I dropped the papers on his desk. "Explain this." He sighed, not with shock but resignation. "I was wondering when you'd find it." My breath caught. "You knew." "It's not theft," he said softly. Philip needed capital to show value to Aliat's family. The Okoyes must see him as more than a name. My chest burned. "So you let him steal from us? From the very company I've been fighting to keep alive." Papa leaned back, his voice weary. "It's not stealing when it's ours. Think beyond balance sheets, Joyce. Business is also alliances, not just numbers. This marriage and merger will carry Solid Rock into a future you alone cannot secure." I could hardly believe my ears. "Merger?" His eyes shifted. "We've been discussing combining with Okoye Estates. They bring capital and prestige. We bring construction expertise. Together, I cut in, we cease to exist. And you plan to push me aside." His silence was my answer. That night I sat alone in my office and wept. 4 years I had carried this company, yet they plotted to hand me a meaningless consulting role, while Philip became the puppet prince of the Okoyes. Rage gave way to clarity when I reviewed the contract I myself had negotiated months earlier with Okoye Estates. Buried in Section 17, subsection C was a shield I had insisted on. Either party could terminate the agreement within 30 days in the event of a merger or restructuring, signed by the CEO or CFO. I was the CFO. My signature was enough. For the first time since the wedding, hope flickered in me. They had dismissed me as invisible, yet invisibility had given me a perfect view of their moves. I whispered to myself. Sometimes when they push you into the shadows, they forget you can see everything. The thought gave me strength. If the Okoyes wanted war, I had a weapon. I confided in Marcus Chen, our long-serving accountant, meeting him secretly in a quiet cafe. His face grew pale as I laid out the documents. "Your father asked me to prepare preliminary valuations months ago," he admitted, ashamed. "He swore me to silence until after the wedding. Joyce, the merger terms are terrible. Solid Rock would essentially vanish. Philip would get a vanity title. You would be cut out entirely." My jaw tightened. "Thank you for your honesty. But from now on, this stays between us." I began rallying those I trusted. Sam Torres, our head of operations, didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting for this moment. Half the staff already know something's wrong. Count me in." Emily Reeves, our marketing director, added, "The Okoyes treat us like we're beneath them. If you're ready to fight back, I'll stand with you." By the week's end, most of the executive team quietly pledged loyalty to me. For the first time, I felt the company shifting behind me like a tide. At the same time, I reached out to Mr. Norton, head of Norton International, a development firm Papa had always dismissed in loyalty to the Okoyes. When I met him privately, he smiled. "I've admired Solid Rock for years, Joyce. But I've always known you were the brains behind it. If you ever free yourself from the Okoyes' chokehold, Norton International would be honored to partner." His words were like fresh wind in my lungs. But my quiet rebellion could not remain secret for long. One evening, Philip appeared in my office. He closed the door and leaned against it. "You've been avoiding me," he said, eyes sharp. Kept my face calm. "I've been running the company." He sat down, lowering his voice. "Look, Joyce, don't fight this. The merger is happening. Aliat's father has influence you can't even imagine. You'll get a consulting role, maybe even a chance to find a husband. Isn't that what you want?" My blood boiled, but I forced a smile. Beneath my desk, I pressed record on my phone. His own words would be my evidence. Philip leaned back in his chair, his tone almost pitying. "You're too rigid, Joyce. Always thinking about numbers and rules. Sometimes sacrifice is necessary for the greater good." I folded my hands. "So, I'm the sacrifice?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Yes. Better you step aside quietly than be forced out publicly." His words carved deep, but inside me, resolve hardened into stone. When he finally left, I replayed his recorded confession and whispered, "Thank you for the rope, brother. You've tied it yourself." 2 days later, I received an invitation to dinner at the Okoye estate. The message came from Madame Ruth herself, sugar-coated but sharp. "We look forward to sharing our vision of the future with you." I accepted politely. But I knew their vision was already written, one that erased me. What they didn't know was that I had prepared my own script. That night, I unlocked Papa's office computer with an old password he'd never changed. Mama's maiden name. Inside I found the draft merger documents. They confirmed my worst fears. Solid Rock would become a mere subsidiary of Okoye Estates, with Papa as a ceremonial board member, Philip as a figurehead vice president, and me offered a temporary consulting role at half my pay. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. This was not a partnership. It was a takeover. I spent the next 3 nights gathering evidence. Every diverted transfer Philip had made. Every email hinting at strategic investments. Every line of the merger agreement that spelled doom for Solid Rock. I prepared neat folders for the board and a sealed letter of termination for Okoye Estates. When I was done, I placed my hand flat on the desk and swore aloud. No more shadows. No more silence. Saturday evening arrived, and I attended the Okoye dinner. The estate glowed with chandeliers and polished marble. Richard Okoye, the patriarch, raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said smoothly. Together, our families will rule this industry. Aliat leaned close, her voice dripping honey. Joyce, you'll have less stress now. Isn't it wonderful? You can finally relax and maybe find yourself a man. I smiled politely, but inside, I filed her words under proof of their contempt. On Monday morning I struck. At 7:30 a.m., I hand-delivered the signed termination letter to Okoye Estates headquarters, leaving copies with their legal department. By 9 a.m. I had called an emergency board meeting at Solid Rock. Papa arrived pale and confused, whispering, "Joyce, this could have waited." "No, Papa," I said firmly. "It cannot." The room filled quickly. Executives, managers, and board members, all waiting. I remained standing, my folders ready. "Thank you for coming on short notice," I began. "I have discovered financial misconduct that threatens the very life of this company." Gasps rippled as I handed out documents. Records of Philip's secret transfers, merger drafts that would erase Solid Rock, projections showing mass job losses. Murmurs filled the air. Papa looked stricken. "Joyce, these are sensitive negotiations." "Sensitive? Cut in. You mean hidden?" "From me. From this board. From everyone." The door burst open. Philip stormed in, face flushed. "What nonsense is this?" he shouted. "Joyce is twisting everything. Those were strategic investments approved by Papa." He looked around desperately. "Tell them, Papa." Papa's lips trembled. Some of it is true. The investments, the merger talks." The board erupted in disbelief. Madam Ellen, our chairwoman, slammed her palm on the table. "Without board approval. This is malpractice." The storm grew louder when Richard Okoye himself walked in with Aliat at his side. Richard waved the termination letter angrily. "This is invalid. We have a showcase event today with 200 investors expecting to see Solid Rock as our partner." Aliat hissed at Philip. "I told you your sister was a problem. You promised me she'd stay quiet." Silence fell as I stood tall. "Mr. Okoye, the contract is clear. In the event of a merger, either the CEO or CFO may terminate with 30 days' notice. I am the CFO. My signature is binding." Gasps filled the boardroom. Richard turned purple with rage. "Do you know who you're dealing with? I will bury your company." I looked him straight in the eye. "You may try. But you'll be too busy explaining to your investors why you no longer have a construction partner." Aliat's face twisted with fury. She turned to Philip, spitting words like venom. "Useless. You can't even control your sister." Papa's shoulders slumped, but for the first time, his eyes held something like shame. And in that moment, the board began to rally. Not behind Philip, not behind Papa, but behind me. The board erupted in chaos. Papa tried to restore order, but Madam Ellen stood. "Enough. This company belongs to its people, not to the Okoyes. I move that we affirm Joyce's termination of the contract and launch an investigation into these irregularities." Hands shot up in agreement. The motion passed unanimously, with only Philip abstaining. Richard Okoye's face hardened. "This is war," he snarled. Aliat hissed at Philip. "Don't bother coming home. I married an Okoye partner, not a disgrace." With that, the Okoyes stormed out. When the room cleared, Papa turned to me with weary eyes. "Joyce, why didn't you come to me first?" My voice trembled, but I held firm. "I did, Papa. You dismissed me. You told me to step aside gracefully. I won't apologize for protecting our company." His face sagged with shame. "The wedding? They sat you with the kitchen staff?" "Yes," I answered simply. Papa turned to Philip, his voice breaking. And you allowed it? Philip shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't my choice. Aliat handled the seating. Papa shook his head in disbelief. Over the next few days, the business world buzzed. Solid Rock's decisive break from the Okoyes made headlines, while Okoye Estate's showcase event collapsed without a construction partner. Investors pulled back. Their stock dropped. Meanwhile, I worked around the clock with Norton International to secure new contracts. For the first time, people began to say openly what had always been true. Solid Rock was strong because of Joyce. But behind the professional triumph, our family was unraveling. Mama blamed me for humiliating your brother and destroying his marriage. Philip stopped coming to the office. At night, I lay awake wondering if I had gone too far. Then one morning an envelope appeared on my desk. Inside were leaked emails between Aliat and her father. Target acquired. Aliat had written after her third date with Philip. He's desperate for approval. Easy to guide. His sister though, she's an obstacle. The words turned my blood cold. The emails revealed everything. How the Okoyes had groomed Philip to be their puppet, how they had planned to push me aside with a consulting role, how they intended to seize Solid Rock before Papa grew too ill. Most damning was an email just 2 days before the wedding. We must move quickly. Thomas's condition is worsening. Once the papers are signed, the sister will be gone within 6 months. Reading those lines I realized. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had planned to erase me entirely. That night, Papa called me to the family house. His voice was weaker than ever. His body thin from illness. Sit, Joyce, he said softly. I need to tell you something before it's too late. He confessed that he had always favored Philip because Philip reminded him of his younger self. Charming, confident, reckless. But the truth, he said, squeezing my hand, is that you are the one who carried this company. I see it now, though too late. I'm proud of you, Joyce. Tears blurred my vision. For the first time, my father truly saw me. When Philip arrived that night, broken and angry after Aliat locked him out of their home, Papa showed him the emails. Philip crumpled as he read. It was never real, he whispered. She never loved me. His voice cracked. They used me. I wanted to hate him, but seeing his face collapse into despair, I only felt pity. They played you, Philip, I said gently. But you can still choose who you want to be now. For once he had no retort. Within weeks, Papa's condition worsened. The doctor told us we had days, not months. In the hospital he gathered Mama, Philip and me. No more fighting, he whispered. Family is too short for that. Joyce, lead Solid Rock with a strength I never gave you credit for. Philip, stop chasing shadows and find your true gift. Patricia, love them both equally. That is my last wish. Hours later, with us holding his hands, Papa took his final breath. The funeral drew hundreds, workers, clients, old friends, all honoring a man who built more than buildings. He built livelihoods. But the true legacy he left was the lesson he forced us to face. Family could destroy or protect, depending on the choices we made. After the funeral, Mama surprised me by saying, Joyce, I was wrong about you. Too many years wasted comparing. Can you forgive me? My throat tightened. I'll try, Mama. That's all any of us can do. A year later, Solid Rock thrived. Norton International had become a powerful partner, and our new sustainability projects, led by a surprising new recruit, Michael Okoye, Aliat's younger brother who rejected his family's schemes, positioned us at the forefront of the industry. Philip, humbled, found his niche in genuine client relations, finally adding real value. Mama poured her energy into the Solid Rock Foundation, funding scholarships in Papa's name. And me. I no longer lived in anyone's shadow. From the kitchen table at a wedding to the head of the boardroom, I had reclaimed my worth. Sometimes revenge is not about making others pay. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve.